Hello? Hello? Is this thing on? I don't know. We'll find out momentarily as we're setting up the stream. Are we actually live? It's not showing up on YouTube yet. We might have done some things to make sure we didn't accidentally stream while we were away and that nobody hacked me. Do I need to go re-enable anything? Or is it just slow today? We're live on Twitch. That's a good sign. Log in to restream.io. Check to see if we're pushing video to YouTube. It seems to think we are. Okay, well that's something. If it thinks we're sending... So we're sending data to YouTube. Okay. So let's refresh on YouTube and see if we can get the chat open there. Normally I play some music at the beginning of the stream, but because these Moby Dick streams, we want to make sure that we've got the VOD for all the people at home to enjoy. Okay, great. So I've got those two chats open. Let's get the Discord chat open. Then we're going to post some links. Wow, lots going on. Boy, I've got announcements I'm getting pinged on. Okay, I can't compete in that contest, so that's fine. Okay, so here's the live event chat. Howdy, Kindleist Technologic. Let's go ahead and post the Project Gutenberg link for today of Moby Dick or the Whale. Ah, it's getting dark. Gotta wake up or do the opposite. Woo! Welcome up, Pacatastic. Welcome, Sent. I'm seeing a lot of messages come in. Before I can do that, I need to get the stream set up. What we're reading. Okay, let's pin the what we're reading link in the Twitch chat here, and then we're going to post and pin that in the YouTube chat. For anybody who's new to our Saturday night streams, these are a little bit less conventional than my normal streams, which I don't even know. You can read into that whatever you want. Okay. That reminds me, we need to set the time thing on YouTube. Boy, there's a lot of stuff that goes into setting up a stream, and you don't realize it until you take a week off. And then you come back and you're like, oh yeah, I didn't do that. I got to do this. Boy, okay. Whoo. Sun is rising. Okay. Woodland Juliet, Dottie Matrix, Mailman Dave, Centauratron, Alpacatastic say things along the lines of howdy, Joe, evening, howdy, congratulations again, thank you so much. Goofy Grammy says hello, congratulations on your wedding, thank you so much. As well, Goofy Grammy, anybody who wants to see, I've got the wedding pictures up at joehills.net/just-married. Let me go ahead and... I picked that URL because I'd remember it, but I can also post that if anybody wants to see the wedding pictures. Joseph Baker says, love the pictures of you guys with Judge Hayes. Judge Hayes was awesome. Serious recommendation if you're a Davidson County resident. Consider getting married with Judge Hayes or by Judge Hayes. Okay. Whew, what do we got to do? Oh, yeah. Woodland Juliet wants the link in the Discord as well. There is that. Badger's hair is amazing. Wow, says NBND. I agree. Also, before... Just to get this out of the way, because I know some people are going to have a lot of questions about the wedding and the honeymoon, and that's going to be a major focus of my next video. And I'm going to have some pictures and stuff and video and whatnot in there. But Badger has already posted a few pictures from our honeymoon on Twitter. And so I'll just go ahead and share those. We don't really have a... People ask me before the wedding, like, when are the wedding pictures going to go up? What's your plan for that? I'm like, we don't have a social media strategy. It's just one of those things where it's like, oh, yeah, let's see. Badger's going to want to post these for family on the internet anyway, so I guess I'll put them up on my website for everybody else because I don't want people trying to, like, go through, like, family Facebook pages looking for reposts and stuff because that's creepy. So, yeah. One less problem. Okay. yeah, so we don't really have a plan or a strategy. We're making this up as we go. I didn't really post wedding pictures or anything last time I got married either. Because once again, this is not like I'm not like a lifestyle influencer. You know what I mean? Like that's not what I do. And so, you know, I do appreciate you guys supporting the show and making it possible for me to afford Badger's immigration expenses and the wedding and everything. And so I do want to like demonstrate like, hey guys, this is a real thing that did happen. I'm not just like scamming you. And also, like I said, you know, because some of this stuff would probably be available via Facebook, even though I don't use Facebook. I know certain family members do, and they would post these pictures anyway. So it's like, well, I'll just take the pictures that the family members were going to post anyway, and I'll post them on my own website. So that way people don't have to be creepy or weird about it, you know? If you want to see the wedding pictures, there's the wedding pictures, you know? Lady W says, personally, I'm just glad y'all are finally together and happy. Oh, me too. It's a huge relief. Like, this whole immigration process was such a time-consuming, stressful thing. It was just a huge relief to kind of get through the other end of it. And, you know, we're still going to have to file the green card paperwork, and that's a whole separate thing. So Technologic says, now that you're back, mind saying where you went on your honeymoon? Great question. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to post Badger's tweet. Mailman Dave 152 says, faking a wedding with a foreign national to scam an audience is a hell of a long con. At the same time, a bunch of Tennessean YouTubers apparently were getting paid like $40,000 a month to promote Russia, which, by the way, if you're a Russian national, I recommend you do everything you peacefully can to depose Vladimir Putin. He is not a good leader. He does not have your best interests at heart. And I think his invasion of Crimea and later Ukraine was pretty dang immoral. I don't think he deserves to be in power, and I hope you can use some sort of peaceful means to encourage him to step down or be removed, because what he's doing is terrible. I don't know how to put that any more gently. I know a lot of ways to put that more aggressively, but because the VOD is going to be saved of this, because it's a Moby Dick stream, I'm trying not to swear, because then it's going to end up in a clip. It's like, Joe Hills says curse word, but they won't even include me, like, cussing out Putin. They'll just include me saying the word, rather than the context of, like, why invading a country is bad. And I don't have time for that. I don't have time for that today. But somebody actually guessed where we were going on honeymoon before we left, just based on me saying, we're going on one of the cheapest honeymoons possible while still being considered a honeymoon. And somebody immediately guessed it. So now that y'all have seen Badger's Twitter posts, if anybody has any guesses. Woodland Juliet, yes, we did go there. That's not where we stayed, but we did visit there more than once. I'm not going to say what you said, though, out loud, in case other people have guesses. Pepper Basetti says, hope you had a chance to rest and hope both of you enjoyed your honeymoon. Yeah, it was nice. Sorry, I'm reading all the chats. I'm out of the habit of reading the chats and responding in order. So I'm like, I read a question out loud and then go back to reading the chat quietly, and then I look bad. Lady DW says Arcadia. Taco Scroll says, was it Canada? Introverted Kid says Bears County. Wasn't Bears County. Woodland Juliet, yes. Your expertise in the woodlands has clearly paid off. We did stay in one of the lodges around there. And you're getting colder. Taco Squirrel guesses Mexico. No guesses in the YouTube chat yet. Oh, is it because I have top chat on and the guesses are getting filtered out? No. It was not Canada. One of the guesses was Canada. but we definitely could not go to Canada until the green card gets cleared. So it's definitely inside the United States. The Grumpy Bunny guesses correctly. Gatlinburg. Yes, Gatlinburg, Tennessee. Not a sponsor. But yeah, Juliet guessed Smoky Mountain National Park, one of the lodges around there, guessing the North Carolina side with Mount Mitchell. That would have been nice, but we couldn't afford it. We were, we stayed in one of the locally owned lodges in Gatlinburg where you could walk into the park from there. We borrowed a car, which is a whole thing, because we were going to rent a car. And that story is probably going to end up in the YouTube video about how that went sideways, because I have to assemble my thoughts on that. Yeah, Badger points out the car was a whole story. Yeah, the car was a whole story. That'll go in the video, because we don't have time for that on tonight's stream. But yeah, we had plenty of fun with that. Yeah, that's fun in the Dwarf Fortress sense. But yeah, we ended up borrowing a car. Taco Squirrel says, how does it feel to finally be married? But immediately after saying, hiya, Badger. So I shouldn't answer that, because you're clearly asking Badger and not me, and I need to know when to shut up. Okay. Woodland Juliet says, I would not have guessed that the North Carolina side is more expensive. Well, it's further. And so that's both more fuel, and we have to leave earlier on both sides, and there's costs to driving, if that makes any sense. I don't know if it would have been more expensive per night dollar-wise, but it would have been more overhead. Taco Squirrel says I'm allowed to answer too. It feels great to finally be married. I am relieved that we're through the immigration process. I'm excited to get to spend the rest of my life with somebody that I'm very happy about. I was going to use the word excited twice. That's how excited I am. Okay. So we need to get into Moby Dick. Let me make sure. Oh, that did not pin properly. I was like, wait, it says, oh yeah. YouTube changed their pin format, so it didn't look like it was pinned, but now it is. Okay. Are we planning on having children? We already have a child. I have a daughter. So I don't know how much more planning there is to do. So, okay. Technologic, thank you for stopping by. Have a great evening. Pum, 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 pum. Okay. What are we doing? Moby Dick. Just as a reminder, once we actually start reading Moby Dick... Oh, you know what isn't pulled up? Is I don't have my links folder. Or links thing. Okay. Okay, just as a reminder, tips are welcome via paypal.me/JoeHills and YouTube Super Chat. And I already took some time off this month. And I'm theoretically supposed to also be taking some time off next weekend to bring my daughter somewhere. I felt kind of bad that it's not that I couldn't bring her on my honeymoon, but I didn't want to. Actually, no, I couldn't have even if I wanted to, because she had school, so I'm fine. But yeah, I don't really think it's appropriate to bring your child on your honeymoon. I feel like that's something, even if it's a second marriage or something. But yeah, so my daughter wanted to go somewhere next weekend, and I promised I'd take her. And so we're going to be having a few we're going to have Friday and Saturday night no streams because I have plans with my kid this weekend. So I don't have to feel guilty about leaving her with my mom for a week. So yeah, we've missed a lot of streams already this month, and I'm about to miss some more. If that's the sort of work ethic you want to support, tips are welcome via paypal.me/JoeHills and YouTube Super Chat. Okay. So let's go ahead and get ready to dive in to Chapter 55 of Moby Dick. I'm going to do a quick recap. If you haven't read Moby Dick so far, you don't really need to know much. you can literally jump into this book 55 chapters in and be okay. The main character / narrator, Ishmael, is basically a guy who, like, walks up to you at a party and starts talking to you about, like, something he did one time while also, like, extensively referencing Wikipedia on his phone. Moby Dick is not technically science fiction in the traditional sense, but it predicts so many of the writing patterns that will become popular later on the internet in the age of online forums and arguments. And, like, this whole book is written kind of like a mix, once again, between somebody you don't want to talk to at a party insisting you hear about his life, and then also a bunch of forum posts he's reading aloud to you where he, like, explains his whale ranking system. And the next 3 chapters are going to be in that forum post category. Imagine a very excited guy at a party explaining to you why he thinks a lot of people are bad at making pictures of whales. That's the format of this novel. It's a voyage combined with a bunch of random stuff. Oh, hey, I don't even know where the abacus is. 1 second. There it is. Yay! Oh, there's the chains in case we need it. Oh, so thank you very much. We got a tip rolling in from Juliet Graves, who tips 5 and says, exactly the work ethic I want to support. Thank you, Juliet Graves. And we got a few tips via PayPal as well. Taco Squirrel to you tips 1 and says, so happy for you to be married after the long wait. Me too, Taco Squirrel to you. Edward, thank you for tipping 20. That is going to get us 1 full face camera expansion milestone. Please direct your attention down here to slot 9 where I'm putting the hot in the hot bar. Boy, I don't think that camera is entirely set up properly. But here we go. Howdy, y'all. Grow Hills here, expanding as I always do in Nashville, Tennessee. Dee-da-dee-da-dee. And then we got another tip rolling in from Julian. Thank you, Julian, for tipping 15. We were 14 away from the next expansion. Now we are 1 past. Appreciate you, Julian. Here we go. Expand, Joe. Do-do-do-do. Okay, I should probably fix the green screen. I was, like, getting our luggage for the honeymoon and then putting it back, and that's one of the things that goes behind the green screen, so... yeah. Professional streamer. Woo! I'm so professional. Back to the microphone. Woo! Yeah. Yeah. There we go. Do-do-do-do. Do-do-do-do-do. Ba-da-da-da-da. Da-da-da-da-da. Okay. So, Chapter 55 is entitled Of the Monstrous Pictures of Whales. And, oh boy. Let's find out what your boy Ishmael has to say about the monstrous pictures of whales. I shall ere long paint to you, as well as one can without canvas, something like the true form of the whale as he actually appears to the eye of the whaleman, when in his own absolute body the whale is moored alongside the whale ship so that he can be fairly stepped upon there. It may be worthwhile, therefore, previously, to advert to those curious imaginary portraits of him, which even down to the present day, confidently challenge the faith of the landsman. It is time to set the world right in this matter by proving such pictures of whaling all wrong. It may be that the primal source of all these pictorial delusions will be found among the oldest Hindu, Egyptian, and Grecian sculptures. For ever since those inventive but unscrupulous times when on the marble panelings of temples, the pedestals of statues, and on shields, medallions, cups, and coins, the dolphin was drawn in scales of chain armor like Saladin's and a helmeted head like St. George's, ever since then has something of the same sort of license prevailed, not only in the most popular pictures of the whale, whale, but in many scientific presentations of him. Now, by all odds, the most ancient extant portrait anyway purporting to be the whale's is to be found in the famous cavern pagoda of Elephanta in India. The Brahmins maintain that in the almost endless sculptures of that immemorial pagoda, all the trades and pursuits, every conceivable avocation of man, were prefigured ages before any of them actually came into being. No wonder, then, that in some sort our noble profession of whaling should have been there shadowed forth. The Hindu whale referred to occurs in a separate department of the wall, depicting the incarnation of Vishnu in the form of Leviathan, learnedly known as the Matsya Avatar. But though this sculpture is half man and half whale, so as only to give the tail of the latter, yet that small section of him is all wrong. It looks more like the taper and tail of an anaconda than the broad palms of the true whale's majestic flukes. But go to the old galleries and look now at a great Christian painter's portrait of the fish, for he succeeds no better than the antediluvian Hindu. It is Guido's picture of Perseus rescuing Andromeda from the sea monster, or whale. Where did Guido get the model of such a strange creature as that? Nor does Hogarth, in painting the same scene in his own Perseus Descending, make out one whit better. The huge corpulence of that Horgathian monster undulates on the surface, scarcely drawing 1 inch of water. It has a sort of howdah on the back, and its distended tusked mouth, into which the billows are rolling, might be taken for the Trader's Gate, leading from the Thames bywater into the Tower. Then there are the Promodromus whales of old Scotch Sebald, and Jonah's whale, as depicted in the prints of old Bibles and cuts of old primers. What should be said of these? As for the bookbinder's whale, winding like a vine stalk round the stock of a descending anchor, as stamped and gilded on the backs and title pages of many books, both old and new, that is a very picturesque but purely fabulous creature, imitated, I take it, from the like figures on antique vases, though universally denominated a dolphin. Sorry, I got lost here. Scrolling. Though universally denominated a dolphin, I nevertheless call this bookbinder's fish an attempt at a whale, because it was so intended when the device was first introduced. It was introduced by an old Italian publisher somewhere around the 15th century, during the revival of learning. And in those days, and even down to a comparatively late period, dolphins were popularly supposed to be a species of Leviathan. In the vignettes and other embellishments of some ancient books, you will at times meet with very curious touches at the whale, where all manner of spouts, jets d'eau, hot springs, and cold Saratoga and Baden-Baden come bubbling up from his unexhausted brain. In the title page of the original edition of The Advancement of Learning, you will find some curious whales. But quitting all these unprofessional attempts, let us glance at those pictures of Leviathan purporting to be sober, scientific delineations by those who know. In old Harris's collection of voyages, there are some plates of whales extracted from a Dutch book of voyages, Anno Domini 1671, entitled A Whaling Voyage to Spitzbergen in the Ship, Jonas in the Whale, Peter Peterson of Friesland, Master. In one of these plates, the whales, like great rafts of logs, are represented lying among ice isles, with white bears running over their living backs. In another plate, the prodigious blunder is made by representing the whale with perpendicular flutes. Then again, there is an imposing quarto written by one Captain Colnay, a post captain in the British Navy, entitled A Voyage Round Cape Horn. Into the South Seas for the purpose of extending the spermaceti whale fisheries. In this book is an outline purporting to be a picture of a Pfister or spermaceti whale drawn by scale from one killed on the coast of Mexico, August 1793, and hoisted on deck. I doubt not that the captain had this veracious picture taken for the benefit of his marines. To mention one thing about it, let me say that it has an eye which, applied according to the company's scale to a full-grown sperm whale, would make the eye of that whale a bow window of some 5 feet long. Ah, my gallant captain, why did ye not give us Jonah looking out of that eye? Nor are the most conscientious compilations of natural history for the benefit of the young and tender free from the same heinousness of mistake. Look at that popular work, Goldsmith's Animated Nature. In the abridged London edition of 1807, there are plates of an alleged whale and a narwhal. I do not wish to seem inelegant, but this unsightly whale looks so much like an amputated sow, and as for the narwhal, one glimpse at it is enough to amaze one, that in this 19th century such a hippogriff could be palmed for genuine upon any intelligent public of schoolboys. Then again, in 1825, Bernard Germain, Count de la Cepede, a great naturalist, published a scientific systemized whale book, wherein are several pictures of the different species of the Leviathan. All of these are not only incorrect, but the picture of the Myceteus, or Greenland whale, that is to say, the right whale. Even Scoresby, a long experienced man touching that species, declares not to have its counterpart in nature. But the placing of the cap sheaf to all this blundering business was reserved for the scientific Frederick Cuvier, brother to the famous Baron. In 1836, he published a natural history of whales, in which he gives what he calls a picture of the sperm whale. Before showing that picture to any Nantucketer, you had best provide for your summary retreat from Nantucket. In a word, Frederick Cuvier's sperm whale is not a sperm whale, but a squash. Of course, he never had the benefit of a whaling voyage, such men seldom have. But whence he derived that picture, who can tell? Perhaps he got it from his scientific predecessor. In the same field, Desmarais got one of his authentic abortions, that is, from a Chinese drawing. And what sorts of lively lads with a pencil those folks are, as many queer cups and saucers inform us. I'm going to take a second. There's a lot of timely racism in this book, and sometimes when we hit the worst of it, I feel like I gotta be like, I think in some ways this is actually an interesting example of him not being racist. He's just like, the Chinese are just as bad at drawing whales as everybody else. Like, that's a strange strike for equality in a book that has a lot of other problems. But, like, yay? This is, Wandering Mass says this chapter is really embodying that this guy would be a nightmare at parties. I know, right? Like, but yeah, no, I was reading that and I was like, oh, is this gonna be super racist? No, he just acknowledges that they're as bad at it as everyone else. Also, you guys can't see this, but once again, I'm back from Gatlinburg. Can you see what's I've got a mason jar from one of the shops that says this is probably moonshine. Give me a second. Foot pedal work? Wandering Mask says, a fun surprise. Instead of this other country is bad, it's everyone but me is a fool. I know. It's how refreshing. What a change of pace. Boy, we're collecting a lot of gravel. How close are we to the end of the chapter? Because since we've already taken this quick regression, part of me wants to do some inventory management. We're close to the end. Okay. So, anyway, let's get back into it. I think I have a place for... Oh, but we need to change tools, too. Sorry, it's... Whole thing. I think I have a place for gravel over here by these roads. Did we stop in Pigeon Forge, too? I'll be talking more about that in tomorrow's video. We're kind of in the middle of a reading that I got distracted by... What sounded like the sort of racism we normally need to address in this book, but it was a different type of problem. But yeah, the short answer is yes, we did stop in Pigeon Forge, and I'm going to talk about that in my next episode. But yeah, I've got a bunch of photos and stuff I got to look through, and I got to kind of sort my thoughts out. Because yeah, I got some fun stories, but I want to tell them right. It's been a very fun week. A lot of good stuff. So, anyway, cool. As for the sign painter's whales seen in the streets hanging over the shops of oil dealers, what shall be said of them? They are generally Richard III whales, with dromedary humps and very savage, breakfasting on 3 or 4 sailor tarts. That is, whaleboats full of mariners. Their deformities floundering in seas of blood and blue paint. But these manifold mistakes in depicting the whale are not so very surprising after all. Consider, most of the scientific drawings have been taken from stranded fish. And these are about as correct as a drawing of a wrecked ship with a broken back would correctly represent the noble animal itself in all the undashed pride of hull and spars. Though elephants have stood for their full lengths, the living Leviathan has never yet fairly floated himself for his portrait. The living whale, in his full majesty and significance, is only to be seen in the sea, in unfathomable waters, and afloat the vast bulk of him is out of sight, like a launched line of battleship. And out of that element, the thing is eternally impossible for mortal man to hoist him bodily into the air, so as to preserve all his mighty swells and undulations. And not to speak of the highly presumable difference of contour between a young suckling whale and a full-grown Platonian leviathan, yet even in the case of one of these young, suckling whales hoisted to a ship's deck, such is then the outlandish, eel-like, limbered, varying shape of him, that the precise expression, the devil himself, could not catch. But it may be fancied that from the naked skeleton of the stranded whale, accurate hints may be derived touching his true form. Not at all. For it is one of the more curious things about this Leviathan that his skeleton gives very little idea of his general shape. Though Jeremy Bentham's skeleton, which hangs for candelabra in the library of one of his executors, correctly conveys the idea of a burly-browed utilitarian old gentleman with all Jeremy's other leading personal characteristics, yet nothing of this kind could be inferred from the Leviathan's articulated bones. In fact, as the great hunter says, the mere skeleton of the whale bears the same relation to the fully invested and padded animal as the insect does to the chrysalis that so roundingly envelops it. This peculiarity is strikingly evinced in the head, as in some part of this book will be incidentally shown. It is also very curiously displayed in the side fin, the bones of which almost exactly answer to the bones of the human hand, minus only the thumb. This fin has 4 regular bone fingers, index, middle, ring, and little finger, but all of these are permanently lodged in their fleshy covering, as the human fingers in an artificial covering. However recklessly the whale may sometimes serve us, he can never truly be said to handle us without mittens, said humorous Stubb one day. For all these reasons, then, any way you may look at it, you must needs conclude that the great Leviathan is that one creature in the world which must remain unpainted to the last. True, one portrait may hit the mark better than another. But none can hit it with any very considerable degree of exactness. So, there is no earthly way of finding out precisely what the whale really looks like. And the only mode in which you can derive even a tolerable idea of the living contour is by going a whaling yourself. But by doing so, you run no small risk of being eternally stove and sunk by him. Wherefore, it seems to me that you had best not be too fastidious in your curiosity touching the Leviathan. And thus concludes Chapter 55 of The Monstrous Portraits of Whales from Moby Dick, or The Whale, by Herman Melville. Okay. So yeah, that was a chapter. So before we talk about Chapter 55, I want to say one thing I've noticed in this book. Well, actually, one thing I've noticed outside this book. Thank you very much to Valerie for supporting the show. Valerie's tipping 64. Woo! Okay, so let's see. We were 19 away from one face camera expansion milestone. 39, 59, and then 5 gets us to 64. So that's 3 face camera expansion milestones incoming. Please direct your attention down here to the lower left. I was going to say I'm lower left as I knock over a bunch of stuff. Sorry. Okay. Here we go. It's time to expand. Joe. Okay, let's go ahead and just crop off some of these sides. Yeah. Numero dos. Even larger Joe. La da da da. Now for that third face camera expansion milestone. Y'all have seen that money go straight to my head with each face camera expansion milestone we hit. But now, like Jacob Marley, these chains I forged in life are about to begin pulling me down to the deep below to remind me that humanity was my business. Here we go. Enter the Joust. Ba 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 ba. Lowering the Joe opacity now to 90%. Thank you very much to Valerie for putting us get through 3 face camera expansion milestones and only $15 away from the next one. So thank you, Valerie, again for supporting the arts and my show in particular. Let's go ahead and see if we got anything else in the chat we need to acknowledge real quick. Hey, Mini Zoekins, thank you for the welcome back message. Glass and Pain, have a good night. David Steffen, welcome back. Yeah, so one of the things about this book is that you'll notice that he'll go and he'll make this wild argument, and you'll be like, man, why can't this guy just let this drop? Okay, there's not a lot of good paintings of whales, whatever. And then you get to the end of the chapter, and you're like, oh, thank God. Okay. So this is, once again, not science fiction. Melville did not write this as a science fiction story, but this incredibly accurately predicts the future of forum posting, or the present-day forum posting, or Discord thing. So you get through somebody's incredibly long Discord message about, like, why something in Star Wars isn't represented accurately. And you're like, okay, wow, I read all of that. That's fine. That's part of what it is to be in a community. Whatever. And then you see that the next message is from the same person, and it's just as long. And so we're not going to jump right into Chapter 56. But Chapter 56 is entitled, Of the Less Erroneous Pictures of Whales and the True Pictures of Whaling Scenes. Okay, so he's just established that there's no such thing as a non-erroneous whaling picture. But some of them are less erroneous, and he's going to talk about those now. And he's also going to say that, you know what, even though you can't depict the whale properly, you can depict whaling. Let's talk about who doesn't do a bad job at depicting whaling. I have no idea who it's going to be. We'll find out, right? Because that's how this book works. Draco Leech says, I was going to comment before my internet cut out that this guy really likes gatekeeping drawing whales. Yeah, we should, yeah, I do think it's funny that Evan Dom, one of my favorite illustrators, did an entire illustrated version of Moby Dick. Oh, hey, we got a tip rolling in from Lost Cult Music. Sorry for not catching that earlier. Lost Cult Music, thank you for the 3. That puts us now 12 away from the next face camera expansion milestone. And welcome, Welk Zero as well. But yeah, Evan Dom, in my opinion, one of the greatest living illustrators of our time. Did an incredible, beautiful illustrated Moby Dick book, which includes pictures of whales that don't suck. Despite one of the arguments in the book being, it's impossible to make a picture of a whale that doesn't suck. Centauritron writes, so far, Ishmael has gaslit us into believing that whales are fish, and Gate kept drawing whales. Now he just needs to girl boss, and he's got all 3. Local says, Joe, welcome back from the honeymoon. Hope you two had a great time. It was fantastic. I'm feeling very well rested, and I'm excited to be back making fun things for y'all to enjoy. And for me to enjoy. I'm going to enjoy them, too. Da-da-da-da-da. Do-do-do-do-do. Okay, so we've got a lot of coal built up, but whatever. We'll worry about that later. That's a problem for later times. Okay. So, how is this part going to work? Yeah, like that, I guess. Yeah, that seems about right. So, yeah, before we jump into Chapter 56, just as a reminder, this is a viewer-supported stream. I just returned from my honeymoon, and when you're self-employed, you don't get paid time off. You just eat through your savings. And let me tell ya, we ate well through my savings. So anybody that would like to support the show, now would be a great time to tip. Very deeply appreciated. But yeah, a few things were more expensive leading up to the wedding than I expected. Nothing like crazy emergency stuff, but just like little things here and there added up. So yeah, I will definitely appreciate any support that y'all want to give. It would be a very helpful time to contribute. Especially because, like I said, I'm going to be gone. I'm not going to be streaming next Friday and Saturday nights because I'm doing something fun with my kid. I'm not going to say exactly what in advance, but I'll tell you all about it later. But yeah, since she didn't get to go on the honeymoon, I felt like, she's like, I really want to do this thing. And I'm like, that's really close to the honeymoon. But also I feel guilty that you don't get to go. So yeah, okay, I'll make it work. But I've still got to make it work. Wandering Mess says, well done, good parenting, sir. Or didn't say well done. I just added that. I feel like I did well done. Thank you, Wandering Mask. Yeah, I've got a pretty good idea of what I want to do for my next HermitCraft episode. It's going to be a little bit kind of like my British travelogue episode, where I'm just going to be talking about the wedding and the honeymoon and stuff like that, and picking up my diamonds from B-Dubs. I was very happy to see that in B-Dubs' latest episode. I was watching that earlier, and it was like, oh, nice. Wandering Mass says the well done was implied. Thank you. But yeah, so lots of time off this month, but I think it's a good decision. I'm not always good at telling if something's going to be a good decision or not. I'm like, this seems like the sort of thing that'll work out. I don't have enough money to back it if it doesn't, but we'll see. But yeah, I'm very glad that we went on the honeymoon, because yeah, I was so wiped out by the weeks leading up to the wedding. Wedding itself went fantastic. I'll tell you all more about that in the episode. Everything went great is the short version, but there were a few things here and there where it's like, oh boy, I didn't budget for that. Whoops. It'll be fine, type of things. But yeah, no horror stories. Nothing went terribly. But yeah, I was definitely just exhausted from the whole lead up to the wedding, because it's a lot of work getting something like that off the ground. And whoops, I'll fix that later. But yeah, so the honeymoon was definitely the good call. I would not have been ready to work. And taking a very chill honeymoon, yeah, we stayed in like a local Gatlinburg hotel that had like a creek view, so we could just sit outside the room. There's like little plastic chairs, nothing fancy, but you know, it's just nice to be able to be like, let's sit outside and read and just chill for a little bit, like, so you can just rest and recover. Like, if anybody's planning a honeymoon, I would say, like, yeah, even if you're going somewhere like, oh, we're gonna go to New York and see all these Broadway shows and whatever, like, the first 2 or 3 days, just schedule for, like, we're gonna chill and decompress, you know? And, like, day 3 and 4, maybe we'll like, yeah, like, we came all the way to New York, let's go do some fancy New York stuff. But, like, because, yeah, like, the second day we were there, the only thing we had was a dinner reservation. for like a restaurant that was less than a block away from our hotel. I was like, let's get one dinner reservation for a nice steakhouse. Because like I know when Badgers previously visited America, visiting American steakhouses was a highlight. I'm not. That's not. I like steakhouses enough, but I wouldn't go unless somebody else wanted to go. So it's like, okay, well, let's plan one nice steakhouse dinner for the second day we're there. So that way, even if we do nothing else all day, we can say, well, we're going to the steakhouse later. That's our big thing. It gives us permission to just relax, you know, and chill. Yeah. Wandering Mass says travel knocks me out a lot. Yeah. Yeah, driving there was complications. Everything turned out fine in the end, but there were definitely some complications with getting there that were stressful for me. So, yeah. I was happy to have the time to decompress. And, woo. Okay, let's see. So, chapter 56 of the less erroneous pictures of whales. Oh, I forgot to post the link. And the true pictures of whaling scenes. So let me post the what we're reading. Link update. Pin that on Twitch. Manually unpin it into stream. Pin that on YouTube. Place pin message. Okay. Yeah, pin it. Pin it. Oh yo, tail pin. Oh yo, tail pin. Dee dee. La da 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 da. It's another tail pin. Okay, where were we? Oh yeah, we're clearing out the stone along here. We're right now outside the beacon range, which is not ideal. Okay, now we're back in. Brought it back around. Okay. Chapter 56 of the less erroneous pictures of whales and the true pictures of whaling scenes. In connection with the monstrous pictures of whales, I am strongly tempted here to enter upon those still monstrous stories of them which are to be found in certain books, both ancient and modern, especially in Pliny, Purchas, Hakluyt, Harris, Cuvier, etc., but I pass that matter by. I know of only 4 published outlines of the great sperm whale: Colnay's, Huggins, Frederick Cuvier's, and Beale's. In the previous chapter, Colnay and Cuvier have been referred to. Huggins is far better than theirs, but by great odds. Beale's is the best. All Beale's drawings of the whales are good, excepting the middle figure in the picture of 3 whales in various attitudes, capping his second chapter. His frontispiece, boats attacking sperm whales, though no doubt calculated to excite the civil skepticism of some parlormen, is admirably correct and lifelike in its general effect. Some of the sperm whale drawings in J. Ross Brown are pretty correct in contour, but they're wretchedly engraved. That's not his fault, though. Of the right whale, the best outline pictures are in Scoresby, but they are drawn on too small a scale to convey a desirable impression. He has but 1 picture of whaling scenes, and this is a sad deficiency, because it is by such pictures only, when at all well done, that you can derive anything like a truthful idea of the living whale, as seen by his living hunters. But taken for all in all, by far the finest, though in some details not the most correct. Presentations of whales and whaling scenes to be anywhere found are two large French engravings, well executed and taken from paintings by one Garnery. Respectively, they represent attacks on the sperm whale and right whale. In the first engraving, a noble sperm whale is depicted in full majesty of might, just risen beneath the boat from the profundities of the ocean, and bearing high in the air upon his back the terrific wreck of stoven planks. The prow of the boat is partially unbroken, and is drawn just balancing upon the monster's spine, and standing in that prow. For that one single incomputable flash of time, you behold an oarsman, half shrouded by the incensed boiling spout of the whale, and in the act of leaping, as if from a precipice. The action of the whole thing is wonderfully good and true. The half-emptied line tub floats on the whitened sea, and the wooden poles of the spilled harpoons obliquely bob on it. The heads of the swimming crew are scattered about the whale in contrasting expressions of affright, while in the black, stormy distance, the ship is bearing down on the scene. Serious fault might be found with the anatomical details of the whale, but let that pass, since, for the life of me, I could not draw so good a one. In the second engraving, the boat is in the act of drawing alongside the barnacled flank of a large running white whale that rolls his black, weedy bulk in the sea like some mossy rock slide from the Patagonian cliffs. His jets are erect, full, and black like soot, so that from so abounding smoke in the chimney, you would think there must be a brave supper cooking in the great bowels below. Seafowls are pecking at the small crabs, shellfish, and other sea candies and macaroni, which the right whale sometimes carries on his pestilent back. And all the while, the thick-lipped Leviathan is rushing through the deep, leaving tons of tumultuous white curds in his wake, and causing the slight boat to rock in the swells like a skiff caught nigh the paddle wheels of an ocean steamer. Thus, the foreground is all raging commotion, but behind, in admirable artistic contrast, is the glassy sea, or the glassy level of a sea becalmed, the drooping, unstarched sails of the powerless ship, and the inert mass of a dead whale, a conquered fortress, with the flag of capture lazily hanging from the whale pole inserted into his spout hole. Who Garnery the painter is, or was, I know not, but for my life, he was either practically conversant with the subject, or else marvelously tutored by some experienced whalemen. The French are the lads for painting action. Go and gaze upon all the paintings of Europe, and where will you find such a gallery of living and breathing commotion on canvas as in that triumphal hall at Versailles, where the beholder fights his way pell-mell through the consecutive great battles of France, where every sword seems a flash of the northern lights, and the successive armed kings and emperors dash by like a charge of crowned centaurs. Not wholly unworthy of a place in that gallery are these sea battle pieces of garnery. The natural aptitude of the French for seizing the picturesqueness of things seems to be peculiarly evinced in what paintings and engravings they have of their whaling scenes. While not 1/10 of England's experience in the fishery, and not the 1,000th part that of the Americans, they have nevertheless furnished both nations with the only finished sketches at all capable of conveying the real spirit of the whale hunt. For the most part, the English and American whale draftsmen seem entirely content with presenting the mechanical outline of things. Such as the vacant profile of the whale, which, so far as picturesqueness of effect is concerned, is about tantamount to sketching the profile of a pyramid. Even Scoresby, the justly renowned right whaleman, after giving a full, stiff length of the Greenland whale and 3 or 4 delicate miniatures of narwhals and porpoises, treats us to a series of classical engravings of boat hooks, chopping knives, and grapnels, all with the microscopic diligence of a Leeuwenhoek submits to the inspection of a shivering world 96 facsimiles of magnified Arctic snow crystals. I mean no disparagement to the excellent voyager. I honor him for a veteran, but in so important a matter, it was certainly an oversight to have not procured for every crystal a sworn affidavit taken before a Greenland justice of the peace. In addition to those fine engravings from garnery, there are 2 other French engravings worth of note, by someone who subscribes himself H. Durand. One of them, though not precisely adapted to our present purpose, nevertheless deserves mention on other accounts. It is a quiet noon scene among the isles of the Pacific. A French whaler anchored inshore in a calm and lazily taking water on board. The loosened sails of the ship and the long leaves of the palms in the background, both drooping together in the breezeless air. The effect is very fine when considered with reference to its presenting the hardy fishermen under one of their few aspects of oriental repose, and in the very heart of the leviathanic life, with a right whale alongside, the vessel, in the act of cutting in, hove over to the monster, as if to a quay, and a boat, hurriedly pushing off from the scene of activity, is about giving chase to whales in the distance. The harpoons and lances lie leveled for use. 3 oarsmen are just setting the mast in its hole, while, from a sudden roll of the sea, the little craft stands half erect out of the water, like a rearing horse. From the ship, the smoke of the torments of the boiling whale is going up like the smoke over a village of smithies. And to windward, a black cloud, rising up with earnest of squalls and rains, seems to quicken the activity of the excited seaman. And that concludes chapter 56 of Herman Melville's Moby Dick or the Whale, entitled Of the Less Erroneous Pictures of Whales and True Pictures of Whaling Scenes. Goran, I'm glad you're still here. I saw you came in just when I started, and I was like, I can't interrupt. Goran, I was at an arcade on my honeymoon. I just got back. I say that. We just got back. We came back at the same time because we're married, so we can do that. That's an option we have. there was an arcade in Gatlinburg, Tennessee we were visiting. And I was actually really impressed how many of the games have physical elements now. I know you go to that big gaming show down in Florida every year where they have all of like the big ticket dispensing games. I forget what those are called. Reclamation games, compensation games. But yeah, when I went to a Chuck E. Cheese 7 years ago when my kid was 4, everything was a giant iPad. And this time, a lot of the games actually had cool mechanical controls and neat stuff. Again, redemption games. Yeah. We didn't really play many of the redemption games because we were just there for the pinball in the downstairs pinball lounge. Oh yeah, I'm not supposed to chew. Okay. Yeah, sorry. I keep forgetting my drink has cherries in it. And if you can't tell from my glass, I got this at one of the trading posts or gift shops. This is a mason jar that has printed on it, "This is probably moonshine." But yeah, like they had like ring toss games with like actual bottles that you throw the rings onto. And they had like a Wheel of Fortune game where you spin the wheel. The Wheel of Fortune game had no spelling component, which I felt was a little bit of a missed trick. It's like, boy, guys, I don't know if it feels like if you're going to make a Wheel of Fortune game, you should maybe spell something instead of just giving tickets out based on how well you spun the wheel. But whatever. I mean, it was cool that they had a thing where you spin the wheel, right? Like, hey, also in the YouTube chat, welcome Audrey Holt, Silkwing Butterfly, Bleffiz, Lee Brown. Lee, I need to text you. I'm sorry. Okay. Oh my gosh, where's my phone? Sorry, Lee. I got. Okay. You guys get to watch me write Lee a text. Lee, thanks so much. I got this on my honeymoon and wasn't taking calls or texts at the time. We did just get married. Okay. Yeah, sorry, my friend from one of my old jobs texted me saying like, "Wait, did I hear you were getting married?" And I was like not answering my phone because I feel like when I'm on my honeymoon, it's a bad idea to answer my phone. Also, the one time I did answer my phone, because I don't have like all the school phone numbers and stuff. Like, you know, I was kind of like, you know, I hope this isn't one of my kids' teachers. Let me just pick it up just in case it's an emergency and they can't reach my mom. Yeah, it was not. I'll complain about that later. But hey, Gordon says Kelly's coming to visit in Orlando tomorrow, and I'm psyched. Awesome. I'm glad to hear it. You guys are always a lot of fun. Carly digs it. Thank you for the raid, as well as Seawolf Productions. Also, we got a tip rolling in from Chloe the Great and Powerful Tip in 70, who says, congratulations on the wedding. I hope you have many happy years together. Many wonderful years together. Thank you, Chloe. 12 gets you one face camera expansion milestone. 32, 52, and then 62, 70. Woo! So that is 3 face camera expansion milestones. And they were only $2 away from the next one. So please direct your attention down here to the lower left, because I'm about to expand Joe. Lowering the Joe opacity now to 80%. Numero dos, even larger Joe. La da da da. Lowering the Joe opacity now to 70%. I have this in a weird place, because the book is where the OBS would normally be. So, numero tres, even larger face. La da da da. Welcome to the most obnoxious face camera expansion milestone. We're going to lower the Joe opacity now to 60%. We call this the Joni Stark helmet cam. At this point, the camera can't cover any more of the screen. It will keep getting bigger every $20 milestone we hit, which, fun fact, we're only $2 away from the next one. So, thank you very much, Chloe the Great and Powerful. So everybody who's tipped up to this point has been making the camera cover more of the screen. And we kind of maxed that out. It's going to keep getting more transparent, though. So it's been getting worse and worse, but now it'll get better and better. And Chloe the Great and Powerful says, well, if it's $2 and tips another $3. So thank you for getting us one past that. That gets us 19 away from the next face camera expansion milestone. After this one, here we go. Expand Jost. La da da da. Yeah, we are at the T. Joe Eckhillsberg stage, lowering the Joe opacity now to 50%. Do. Much easier to see through, especially when it's, you know, daytime and we're outdoors. Let's go ahead and swap out this pick real quick, like zip. Great. I don't really need to be carrying apples and pumpkin pie either. So yeah, let's, boy, my shovel situation is not ideal. We are going to eventually have to go repair tools. But thank you very much, Chloe the Great and Powerful. Magic Queen says, that's only a little creepy looking. Thank you. Also, if you're just coming in, we are reading Moby Dick tonight. We just finished chapter 56, which was about the less terrible pictures of whales, or paintings of whales. And we're about to transition to chapter 57. Did anybody have any thoughts on chapter 56 or 55 before we move on? I got to pin these links, so we got a moment. But yeah, Goran, if you're still there, yeah, you know, seeing how many cool games there were at the arcade that like have these physical elements, the redemption games and stuff, I was like, oh man, it'd actually be really cool to go to a expo convention thing and play some of these without having to pay for them, because they're not cheap to play. So we mainly played pinball. Oh, which reminds me, I need to post, yeah, at one of the other arcades in town, they had a Ghostbusters. Hey, Seawolf Productions, thank you for the raid. Welcome. So here's my, I keep wanting to say fiance, my spouse, Badger, was player 1 in Ghostbusters. This is Badger's favorite pinball game, and just absolutely mopped the floor with me. Ball 2, Badger played through enough of the game to get 3 extra balls. I did not. I had 17 million points. Badger 649 million points. 649 million points is a lot of points on Ghostbusters. I'll tell you that. But yeah, so yeah, we got done with that. Badger was like, okay, my arms hurt now. You want to play something else by yourself while I chill? I'm like, okay. But yeah. I really like Stern's Ghostbusters, so that was fun getting to play that out on location, because we don't really... There might be one somewhere around Nashville. I'm not 100% sure if the one at Game Galaxy is working. Sometimes it's working, sometimes it's not. But we don't get to play that very often. It doesn't come up in local tournaments, at least. And so it tends to be like, whatever's in local tournaments is what we end up practicing the most. Hey, Jude. I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. Okay. So, yeah. So, chapter 57. So, we've talked about how Ishmael does not approve of any paintings of whales, basically. He approves of a few paintings of whaling, depicting the boats and the seamen, the harpooneers, that sort of thing. You know, he's like, yeah, you're never going to nail a picture of a whale, but a picture of a whale ship and its crew hard at work, that you can do, if you're French. But now he's about to talk about other depictions of whales. So, chapter 57 of Moby Dick, or The Whale, by Herman Melville. Of whales in paint, in teeth, in wood, in sheet iron, in stone, in mountains, in stars. On Tower Hill, as you go down to the London docks, you may have seen a crippled beggar, or kedger, as the sailors say, holding a painted board before him, representing the tragic scene in which he lost his leg. There are 3 whales and 3 boats, and one of the boats, presumed to contain the missing leg in all its original integrity, is being crunched by the jaws of the foremost whale. Any time these 10 years, they tell me, has that man held up that picture and exhibited that stump to an incredulous world, but the time of his justification has now come. His 3 whales are as good whales as were ever published in Waping, at any rate, and his stump as unquestionable as of a stump as you will find in the western clearings. But though forever mounted on that stump, never a stump speech does the poor whaleman make, but with rueful, downcast eyes stands contemplating his own amputation. Throughout Pacific and also Nantucket and New Bedford and Sag Harbor, you will come across lively sketches of whaling scenes, graven by the fishermen themselves on sperm whale teeth or ladies' busks wrought out of the right whale bone, and other like scrimshander articles, as the whalemen call the numerous ingenious contrivances they elaborately carve out of the rough material in their hours of ocean leisure. Some of them have little boxes of dentistical-looking instruments, specially intended for the scrimshandering business. But, in general, they toil with their jackknives alone. With that almost omnipotent tool of the sailor, and they will turn you out anything you please in the way of a mariner's fancy. Oh, wait, this is going to be bad. Oh, no, this is going to be bad. I was going to say, if we can get back to where the water was, we can fly. Yeah, let's go find a bed that's not going to be creepered. Long exile from Christendom and civilization inevitably restores a man to that condition in which God placed him, i.e., what is called savagery. Your true whale hunter is as much a savage as an Iroquois. I myself am a savage, owing no allegiance but to the king of cannibals, and ready at any moment to rebel against him. Now, one of the peculiar characteristics of the savage in his domestic hours is his wonderful patience and industry. An ancient Hawaiian war club or spear paddle, in its full multiplicity of carving and elaboration of carving, is as great a trophy as human perseverance, as a Latin lexicon. For, with but a bit of broken seashell or shark's tooth, that miraculous intricacy of wooden network has been achieved, and it has been cost steady years of steady application. As with the Hawaiian savage, so with the sailor savage. Okay, this is another case where, like, there's a lot of racism of the era in this book, but occasionally he's using it to try to make a point that other people aren't that different from white Protestants, and he's super clumsy about it. But I think that this is one of the well-intentioned ones. This is the problem with reading public domain books. Is like he's trying to explain this in a way that, like, what he would consider the parlor room Protestants of the time would find acceptable. You know, he's got this story about a whale voyage, which is remarkably progressive in the treatment of the crew being multiracial team members and stuff like that in some ways. But then in other ways, it's just like, oh boy, I might not have said that like that. Oh, okay. Centauratron says, it's you and I aren't so different, but with less okay language. Yeah. Yeah, because it's like, the idea is that the parlor room Protestant reader of this book would theoretically at least somewhat identify with Ishmael, right? That's, I think, one of the reasons it's important he goes to church in the earlier chapters and stuff, right? But, like, Ishmael is just basically, you know, coming in and saying, like, you know, hey, it's not where you're born that focuses people on certain types of craft. It's what you have available to you and the time you have. And so, like, he's in a burgeoning industrial world where people don't have time to make stuff like this anymore. Except for sailors who are kind of not necessarily sitting out the Industrial Revolution, because the Industrial Revolution is affecting them in all sorts of ways. But the sailors have leisure time allocated to them differently than factory workers of the era, right? And so it's kind of one of those things where he's trying to say, like, hey, this doesn't just have to... This idea of, like, art made by people with free time doesn't have to only be for people who aren't white. There are, you know, there are other people who aren't living this Industrial Revolution, you know, work-life balance lifestyle, too. They're just living, you know, adventurous lives at sea, right? You know, it's... Yeah. Once again, in any book where you're constantly like, yeah, there's a lot of racism in here, the racism is a problem, and I'm not trying to pretend it's not. But I am trying to explain why I think the book is worth reading and persevering through regardless of that. Because sometimes people on the cutting edge of this stuff are cutting. Yeah, it's like on the bleeding edge, there's some blood drawn. It's not ideal, but like I genuinely think Melville's heart was in the right place on a lot of this stuff, even if it wasn't well done at all. Okay. So, as with the Hawaiian savage, so with the white sailor savage. With the same marvelous patience and the same single shark's tooth of his one poor jackknife, he will carve you a bit of a bone sculpture, not quite as workmanlike, but as close-packed in its maziness of design as the Greek savage, Achilles' shield, and full of barbaric spirit and suggestiveness as the prince of the fine old Dutch savage, Albert Dürer. Wooden whales, or whales cut in profile out of the small dark slabs of the noble South Sea warwood, are frequently met in the forecastles of American whalers. Some of them are done with much accuracy. At some old gabled-roof country houses, you will see brass whales hung by the tail for knockers to the roadside door. When the porter is sleepy, the anvil-headed whale would be best, but these knocking whales are seldom reliable as faithful essays. On the spires of some old-fashioned churches, you will see sheet iron whales placed there for weathercocks, but they are so elevated, and besides that are to all intents and purposes so labeled with hands off that you cannot examine them closely enough to decide upon their merit. In bony, ribby regions of earth, where at the base of high broken cliffs, masses of rock lie strewn in fantastic groupings upon the plain, you will often discover images as of the petrified forms of the Leviathan, partially merged in grass, which, of a windy day, breaks against them in a surf of green surges. Then again, in mountainous countries where the traveler is continually girdled by amphitheatrical heights, here and there, from the lucky point of view, you will catch passing glimpses of the profiles of whales defined along the undulating ridges. but you must be a thorough whaleman to see these sights. And not only that, but if you wish to return to such a site again, you must be sure to take the exact intersecting latitude and longitude of your first standpoint. Else, so chance-like are such observations of the hills, that your precise previous standpoint would require a laborious rediscovery. Like the Solomon Islands, which still remain incognita, though once high-ruffled Mendana trod them and old Figuera chronicled them. Nor, when expandedly lifted by your subject, can you fail to trace out great whales in the starry heavens, and boats in pursuit of them, as when, long filled with thoughts of war, the eastern nations saw armies locked in battle among the clouds. Thus, at the north, have I chased Leviathan round and round the pole with the revolutions of the bright points that first defined him to me. And beneath the effulgent Antarctic skies I have boarded the Argo Novice, and joined the chase against the starry Cetus, far beyond the utmost stretch of Hydrus and the flying fish. With a frigate's anchors for my bridle bits, and fasces of harpoons for spurs, would I mount the whale, and leap the topmost skies, to see whether the fabled heavens and their countless tenants really lie encamped beyond my mortal sight. And that concludes chapter 57 of Moby Dick, or The Whale, by Herman Melville, entitled Of Whales in Paint, in Teeth, in Wood, in Sheet Iron, in Stone, in Mountains, in Stars. So, yeah. He's all over the place, that Ishmael. All over the place. Climbing mountains in Antarctica, Antarctica, whatever. He's having fun. He's having a lot of fun out there. You know, that's the most important thing. Wondering Mess says this book really is a series of blog posts. Yeah! But, like, that's the thing, is it's not like how Charles Dickens novels are like a series of newspaper, like, fiction, right? It's not broadsheet stories stitched together into chapters. This is more like blog posts. This is more like something you would read today in its structure, where the guy's like, okay, I know this is technically a blog about this, but I was out cycling, and let me tell you what I ran into. You know, I was talking to this old guy who was a machinist, and man, machining is really cool, and blah, blah, blah. You know, he was showing me, like, in his garage, he's got this big old milling machine, and, you know, like, I pointed at a part on my bicycle that I was like, oh, yeah, this thing's worn out. I'm going to have to buy a new one soon. And he's like, I could make you that in 10 minutes. And he just made me this part for my bike in 10 minutes with this milling machine. It was the fastest, most amazing work. I mean, I don't know if the metal's the right kind of metal. I don't know if it's going to hold up in the weather, but, like, he just made it. He didn't 3D print it. He just looked at the part, took a bit of metal, and made the thing. Here's a picture of the original part from the bike, and here's a... I'm literally just making up a blog post. What am I doing? What am I doing? I'm just really going way in the weeds on this blog post about this machinist. But, like, that's what Moby Dick is, though. Okay, it's fine. Grace Winder says, I like how upset he got at people not letting him inspect their whale art for scientific accuracy. Centauratron says, I feel like I definitely would have put the book down long ago and not picked it back up if I weren't reading alongside the stream. I will say, when I first listened to this as a book on tape years ago, I don't think the author was putting into it what it really deserved in terms of, like, the amount of disdain. Like, this is a book by a guy who disdains people. Like, it's, like I said, it feels like an internet thing because there's just so much disdain. He does not think anybody is good at their jobs, except maybe him. And he will tell you that. You know what I mean? That's a big part of the book, is that that's just his worldview. And like, I'm assuming that Melville is doing this as a bit, right? Like, when you read, what's that book with Holden Caulfield? Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. You're not supposed to think, boy, Holden Caulfield is awesome. Because, like, J.D. Salinger intentionally wrote him to be kind of terrible as, like, a blatant hypocrite and problematic point of view character, right? And I would like to think that Melville intended Ishmael to be a problematic point of view character and narrator. But I honestly don't know. I don't know Melville well enough. I haven't read enough about him to know. Maybe this is just like, maybe this is his self-insert fan fiction where he's like, people would take me more seriously about whales if I was a real whaleman. What if I wrote a book from the point of view if I was a real whaleman and then everybody had to take that whaleman seriously, right? Like, I'm sure there's a correct answer to this. I don't feel like this is an unsolvable thing. Because, like, when we were reading Bram Stoker's Dracula, I was like, you know, as I'm reading it, I'm like, you know, Van Helsing feels kind of like a Mary Sue. Because he has a lot in common with Bram Stoker. They're both Catholic, blah, 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 you know. But as I'm reading it, I'm like, oh, I don't know. Maybe I'm being too harsh about it. But the thing is, Van Helsing's first name is Abraham. It's Bram. He has the same first name as the character. I'm like, oh, you know what? I don't need to Google this. I don't need to do further research. He literally named the character after himself, but doesn't tell you that until like 50 chapters into a 52-chapter book. Right? So I have a feeling we'll probably figure out by the end of this how much Melville agrees with, but yeah, so the whole thing is Van Helsing being Dutch was just because Bram Stoker was Irish Catholic, and he knew that the English would never accept an Irish Catholic professor helping these Englishmen fight a vampire, right? And so he had him be a Dutch Catholic. Because he wanted to incorporate, like, the Eucharist and other Catholic liturgical and sacramental elements into the story. That was really important to him. And so, yeah, he created this character that would, like, explain all this Catholic stuff to the British people, who is way cooler than him in a lot of ways. I mean, I'm not saying Bram Stoker wasn't cool, but, like, Van Helsing is considered, like, one of the coolest people in literature. And it's just his own self-insert. It's just, what if I got to boss a bunch of English guys around while we fight a vampire? Sided says, is there a length a chapter in a book is supposed to be? No. Depends on what you're trying to accomplish. So, reading Dracula was a lot easier than reading this because every chapter was about the same length. But with this, I started reading chapter 54 2 weeks ago, and it ended up being, like, 8 times longer than every other chapter in the book. And I didn't know that going in because I've read this book a long time ago. I'm not pre-reading it before the streams. This is just kind of a fun, chill thing to do on Saturday nights, not like a serious attempt to make a book on tape. And boy, there was a lot in there. Okay. You know what I also should probably do at some point? I should mention that, just as a reminder, this is a viewer-supported stream. We are $19 away from the next face camera expansion milestone. Tips are welcome via paypal.me/JoeHills and YouTube Super Chat. Photo Pulsar says, if I ever have to read this for class, I'm totally rewatching all these streams. I mean, yeah, it's a really interesting book. It's the most science fiction book that isn't science fiction, is probably how I would describe it, because it doesn't describe anything science fiction-y, but it's written like Melville is from the current day and he knows what Wikipedia are, he knows what forums are, he knows what blogs are, and he's just like, oh, well, I'm going to write a story with these futuristic frameworks, because there are books today that are written in the framework of a blog, like Constellation Games, one of my favorite sci-fi novels by Leonard Richardson, is the premise is that aliens make contact with Earth, and the main character is a video game reviewer, and so when the aliens grant Earth access to their library, he requests copies of all of their video games so that he can play them and explain their cultures. Because it's like a group of like 11 different types of aliens from like different solar systems and stuff that contact Earth. And so he's like, well, hey, you know, what I do is I review video games and try to understand things from those games I play, and so maybe I can do some sort of cross-cultural exchange by learning about people from other planets through their games. And it goes sideways. It's a really good book. Let me see if I can find. I really like the author Leonard Richardson. He's a really cool guy. Constellation Games. Yeah, okay. Here is the link to that. Magic Queen says, if I could get PayPal to work for me, I would donate. No worries. If you get it working another time, no rush. Andrew Webb says, howdy, Joe. 4 a.m. getting ready for work here. Awesome. Hero Game says, book recommended by Joe is always a must look. Wonder Mass says, ooh, thank you. Yeah, I get asked, as we get close to Christmas, more and more people start asking me for book recommendations. So I'm actually, one of the things I was talking to, I keep wanting to say my fiance, one of the things I was talking to Badger about on the drive was, I think I might put like a list together of like my book recommendations and stuff before Christmas, not like December 24th, but like far enough before Christmas that like when all the people start rolling into the chat and saying, Joe, it's September and I got to buy my dad a book for Christmas. He likes sci-fi. You read sci-fi. What do you recommend? It's like, yeah, I just want to have a list that I can point people to with like explanations. But yeah, Constellation Games would definitely go on that list. It wouldn't be necessarily a ranked list because I hate ranking things. It would probably be alphabetical by author or in year of publishing or something. But yeah. Leonard Richardson, I really loved his both Constellation Games. He's also a great blogger. I really like his reviews of films and stuff on his blog. But he's the guy that came up with the reef concept, where he took the spawn chunks from 40,000 publicly available Minecraft maps and pushed them all into one map. I was the one that suggested he order them by elevation, I think. I think I can claim credit for that. Because he was like, yeah, one of the problems is that, like, you have all these chunks together, and they're all, like, different heights, so it's hard to traverse them. I was like, well, could you sort the chunks by height and just have them go, like, east to west rising or something like that? Or, like, diagonally northeast to southwest or something. So that way, as you progress through the map, like, things get taller or shorter. I think I did. I don't know. I don't have that conversation written down. I feel bad claiming credit for something that I'm not 100% sure about, but I think that was my suggestion. But yeah, he made the reef map. I'll get you a link to the reef map too. Chloe the Great and Powerful says, Joe, have you read This Is How You Lose the Time War? It sounds like it would be right up your alley. Who wrote it? That sounds like something I've read, but I'm not sure. Is that a short story? If it's a short story that's been in Asimov's or Analog, then I've probably read it. But let me find the Reef Minecraft map thing. Yeah, because yeah, these aren't archive.org because Leonard at the time was working for the Internet Archive. It's a novella. I feel like that was it a novella that was published? Oh, it was first published by Simon and Schuster. Okay, no, then I haven't read it. I'll have to look into that. That sounds cool. Full-length novel by Max Gladstone. Okay. Yeah, because I've read a lot of novellas that initially get published in Asimov's or Analog. Because Badger, 1 year for my birthday, was like, what do you want for your birthday? And I'm like, well, the local bookshop stopped carrying Asimov's and Analog. But I don't want to get a subscription because then every time I move, I'm going to have to update the address. Badger's like, I'll sign you up for that. I was like, will you update my address when I move? Badger's like, yes. And I was like, yay. And so every year for my birthday, my present is usually Badger re-upping my Asimov's and Analog subscription. So that's been really nice. I was so disappointed when the local bookshops stopped selling them. She sells science fiction by the seashore. But yeah, I was reading quite a bit of Analogs and Asimov's on the balcony at the Honeymoon. That was nice. Just chilling, enjoying some short fiction that my then fiance bought me. Bum, bum, bum. Blefiz also recommends this is how you lose the time war. Interesting. Okay, cool. This is the first song for your mixtape, and it's short just like your temper, somewhat golden like the afternoon used to spend before you got too cool. Okay, so we're probably gonna need to cash out our pickaxe here and get a different one. Is it still setting up now? Yeah, we should probably take that down. I think we're set up at this point. How do you guys feel? We set up? I probably haven't actually set up the stream. Like, I was like, well, because I had forgotten. I was like, oh, I'll take that down after I set up the green screen. And then I forgot. Okay. Oh. Andrew Webb, I'm not familiar with that book, but I'm glad you're enjoying it. My most recent audiobook was book 5, I think, of the Bobaverse. Let me go to Dennis E. Taylor's website. This is Dennis E. Taylor is also going to go on my well, that's not it. DennisETaylor.org. Okay, so if I go to his blog, does he have... Nope. Status of things. Nope, he hasn't updated his blog in a while, so he doesn't have a link to the new book. Okay. The 5th book just came out. Not Till We Are Lost. Flywoods, thank you for tipping. Let me see. I don't know what that's called. 300 Philippine pesos. And who says, "Hey Joe, I'm working a fair stall. I can't listen, but I'm glad to see you back. Congrats on your wedding." Thank you so much. So let's see. So 300 Philippine pesos is... websites are... How is this... Pfft. Okay, Google, you had one job. 300 Philippine pesos to US dollars. Okay, well, you know what? It's yellow. Usually the yellow on YouTube means $10, I think. So let's just assume that's $10. So that's going to put us 9 away for the next Face Gamer expansion milestone. Thank you, Flywoods. I hope you have a good time at the fair. I know you're working, but you can still enjoy things. It's Wandering Mask says it's $15. Okay, well, cool. We'll put that 4 away from the next Face Gamer expansion milestone then. Tips are welcome via paypal.me/JoeHills and YouTube Super Chat. Andrew Webb says the book he's reading now is called Age of Eternity. Oh, that's cool. Kindless asks, Joe, are you looking forward to getting your hands on The Last Dangerous Visions, the final speculative fiction anthology by Harlan Ellison? So the estate is publishing it after his death. Science fiction's most famous unpublished book. It was announced for publication in 1973, but has not seen print 50 years later. That's interesting. I will have to check that out when it comes out. Interesting. Michael Straczynski, the Elliston Estates executor, announced he would oversee the project to publish the book. It will not include withdrawn stories nor stories overtaken by real-world events. I kind of want the ones overtaken by real-world events. Like, if there's a story that takes place, like, you know, in Czechoslovakia, like, let's maybe include it. Rights to stories not used will revert to the authors. It'll be published September 1st, 2024. Or that was the announcement, but it's been moved to October 1st. Interesting. Interesting, Kindless. That was not on my radar, that was coming around. Coming around again. Do 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 do. La ta 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 ta. Bum 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 ba da 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 da. Andrew Webb says, I mean, if it's out of print for 50 years, is it even that good? Well, it's not that it was out of print for 50 years. It's that, so the guy bought the rights to publish a bunch of short stories by other authors, right? And then he never published it because he had a story that he was working on for the book that he just couldn't crack. And the other authors were like, hey, can we print our story somewhere else if you're not going to publish it? And he's like, there's no time limit on my contract. I'm going to get to it, you guys, I promise, right? So these are a bunch of unpublished works that were probably pretty good if he paid for them in the first place, right? Because he did pay for them. Otherwise, contractually, he wouldn't have really had anything on him, right? Lady Oolong says, I just finished Diane Dwan's Harbinger trilogy, set in the Star Drive RPG universe, a defunct sci-fi RPG that Wizard of the Coast is now sitting idle on the copyright for. Interesting. Yeah, I remember reading a lot of Diane Dwan stuff when I was a kid. She did a lot of Star Trek novels back then. Was Imzadi one of hers? I feel like it might have been. She wrote Dark Mirror. Oh, yeah, yeah. I remember Dark Mirror. That was a really good one. That was a Mirror Universe book with Picard. Peter David did Imzadi. Okay, yeah. The thing is, I remember I got Imzadi and Dark Mirror from the library in the same trip. And so I feel like those got muddled in my head. Yeah, I haven't read Dark Mirror since I was in 6th grade, so Kindle says that it played the Mirror Universe straight and was very good. I remembered liking it at the time, but, like, I haven't gone back and reread a lot of Star Trek stuff. Yeah. And, like, I didn't really own very many Star Trek books. I got them all from the library. So it's not like I can just go pick them up easily. Hey, we got a tip rolling in from Wandering Mask for 10. Thank you very much, Wandering Mask. That's going to get us $6 past our next face camera expansion milestone. Here we go. Please direct your attention to the center of the screen because I'm about to expand me. Dee. Okay. That's not large enough. That's supposed to be bigger. So because of where the Moby Dick reading ended up, my OBS is in a weird place, so it's hard for me to do the camera stuff like I normally would. Okay, cool. Let's actually, now that we're done reading Moby Dick for the night. Yeah, I haven't read Diane Dwan's Young Wizards. Baby blues intensify. Hey. So, yeah, other stuff that's gonna go on my So, guys, I want to hear you. I want to hear you. No, I want you to hear me out. So I wanted to talk about and get feedback on how I was thinking of splitting up this gift guide into like categories or separate blog posts or videos, or I haven't figured. It'll probably be blog posts because I like the idea of it being a list that I can link people to in the middle of a stream and they can read it while listening to the stream. Whereas, like, in a video, they'd have to tab out or whatever. And maybe I'll adapt the blog post into a video separately at some point. But, okay. So, I was thinking that it would be so important to make it clear which things I'm recommending are made by people I know or that I've at least met versus like random people who are pretty cool and good at what they do, but I was like, man, I don't want to have a big disclaimer every time I get to a book where it's like, hey, even though this is not a sponsored post in any way, and I recommend Constellation Games because it's a good book, I should disclose that I've met Leonard Richardson multiple times, hung out with him. He stayed at my house during the eclipse. He's a cool guy. You know, like, you know, like I feel weird about lumping in people I know or am acquainted with like complete strangers, right? So like Christine Catherine Roosh wrote the diving series, and I've never met her, and I probably will never meet her. And I feel like recommending the diving series alongside something where I'm like, hey, let me talk about how cool Evan Dom is. And like, oh man, I got to hang out with him at PAX, blah, 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 blah. And then it's like, oh, and here's something that's really good, but it's by a lady I never met. Like, I feel like that creates a weird contrast that I don't want to deal with. So I'm almost thinking there should be a separate post for gifts. So it's like Joe Hills's gift guide of things made by people I've met versus things made by people I don't know but think highly of, you know? And then I almost think there should be a third category of things made, or like the other two would be like stuff that like you wouldn't necessarily have heard of. It'd be like weird, like the two categories I've described so far, like constellation games. Most people have never heard of it, right? You'd probably have to special order it. You can get it. It is in print, but it's not like all over the place, right? I feel like me saying, okay, here's, you know, Joe's, you know, off the beaten path recommendations by people I know or people I've met. Here's Joe's off the beaten path recommendations for people I don't know. I can't vouch for these guys. They seem talented, but like I don't know this guy. You know. So, you know, your mileage may vary, right? And then I have like a third thing for it's like, here's a bunch of stuff you've already heard of, but might not have had it explained well to you. Like, or this might be a great gift for here's stuff that's, you know, this person might have already heard of, or like, so for example, if you're buying something for somebody who likes science fiction, you don't want to buy them Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy because they've already read it. But if there's certain cases where like if it's for a young person or something like that, it's like maybe I should explain why Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is a good book. I don't think that Terry Pratchett needs me to recommend him. But for people whom it's like, okay, so if you're buying basically something where it's like, okay, all of these recommendations are going to be completely mundane to somebody who's really into this genre. But if you're looking for a gift for somebody who's just starting to get into this genre, like a teenager or, you know, somebody who's just discovered that they're actually like, oh, maybe science fiction is cool or fantasy is cool. Like, you know, Brandon Sanderson, Terry Pratchett, Douglas Adams. I could write some good stuff, I think, recommending their work, but I don't think most people need that. You know what I mean? Like, if like the point of the gift guide is to recommend like the outlandish stuff, but like I would probably say on like have a big thing at the beginning of the here's the stuff that's like very well established but still worth considering. You know, I'd probably say something like, hey, ask them if they've read anything by this guy. Because, you know, like, for example, with Sanderson, if they're like, oh, yeah, I've just finished Mistborn, but I haven't started Way of Kings yet, you know, maybe buy them Way of Kings or buy them one of the side stories, you know, like, here's, you know, that sort of thing, right? Like, so I'm trying to figure out how to frame that. Kindlist says, one thing with separating these things is it kind of gives the message that books you like by people you know may not be as good as the ones by people you don't know. Well, the problem is I end up with weird disclaimers in the middle of the thing otherwise, so I don't know. I feel like saying, here's people I can vouch for personally on some level. It has, if you want something where, like, it's like, here's somebody, because the thing is that most of the things where it's like people that I'm recommending, most of the people that I'd be recommending that you haven't heard of, I've met, kind of, right? Because if I hadn't met them, I might not have heard of this. Or the circumstances that led to me being recommended their work led to me meeting them, right? Like, I read Evan Dom's work before I read anything by Evan Dom. I knew who Leonard Richardson was before I met Leonard Richardson. But, like, I don't know. I feel like, so, like, it's me both recommending because the thing is, this is one of those things, like, I think that when people are making decisions about how they want to spend their money, sometimes they want to give their money to people who are small creators, or maybe not small, but are still, they're like self-employed artists, right? So I feel like some of the people who support my work would want to support other kind of self-employed artists who are not in the mainstream as much. And so the sorts of people that I would know would be the sorts of people that are not in the mainstream. And so, like, that's why it's like kind of one of those things where it's like, there's almost 3 categories here. So mainstream you can't avoid them, like Douglas Adams and Terry Pratchett. And then there's, like, okay, the Diving series by Christine Catherine Rouge would be kind of in the middle. And then, like, there's the people I know because they go to the same conventions as me, right? So Madam Mayhem says, yeah, it's kind of like mainstream versus Indian niche. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I don't know. I'm bouncing around ideas. Yeah. Hey, welcome, Lizzie Mac. Glad to see you. Lady Elong says, extra credits does recurring games you might not have tried episodes, and leads with the idea that games on the list are interesting for one idea or another. Not necessarily the greatest, but they do something that's worth checking out. That's the thing, is I was also thinking of doing something similar with games recommendations, right? So once again, there's game developers who I've met in real life and hung out with, like Joe Mirabello, and there's games developers like the guy who made Master Key, who I think his name is Acromi. I don't know him. I don't know the guy who made Balatro. I'm not sure if I would recommend Balatro because it's one of the greatest games ever. But, like, it will eat your life. Balatro is ludicrously good at its core gameplay loop. Kind of like Civ, where it's like, Civ is really great. Well, would you recommend it? I mean, do you have a lot of vacation days saved up? Like, I don't know. I don't know if I'd recommend it. I don't know if it's a good idea. Drew Baca writes, evening, y'all. Welcome back, Joe. Welcome, Drew Baca. Dun, 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 dun. Lizzie Max says, congrats on the wedding. Thank you. And Meeper says, Joe, huge congrats on the wedding. Thank you. You didn't have to show up Lizzie Mac like that, though, with the huge congratulations. No, I'm kidding. You're fine. That's completely acceptable here. But yeah, I'm very happy to be back, feeling rested after my time away. More details about the trip and stories will be in the next episode. I posted some things on Twitter from my fiance earlier. But yeah, my fiance posted a couple of pictures, or a few pictures from the honeymoon here. I haven't had time to get my stuff organized yet. I keep saying fiance. We're married now. I did it. We did it. I mean, I actually will claim credit for making sure that, like, all the logistics of the wedding went through. Like, that's the I did it part of it was, like, everything actually happened on the day. Like we got the food, we got the courtroom. Because, yeah, I was in charge of all that stuff. Because Badger had to organize getting everything moved from London and a bunch of immigration stuff. So Badger was handling the immigration stuff and the move intercontinentally, and I was handling the, like, making sure the wedding actually happened stuff. And I was so terrified that something was going to go wrong. And somehow it all worked out. Yay. Have I read any of Martha Wells's books? I don't think so. The name sounds really familiar. I read so much stuff when I was in middle school and high school. The name sounds very familiar, but... Kindle says, I'm glad all the logistics lined up. You seem very stressed out Thursday morning. Yeah, because I was like, well, if this doesn't happen for some reason, or if this goes sideways for some reason, it's going to be my fault. But I had backup plans on backup plans, and we didn't need basically any of them, and so, yay. It was stressful, though. So I was glad to take the time off after. Enjoy hanging out with Badger. I have not read a Murderbot series. I have not read Binti by Nidhi Okafor. I should probably check that out. Yeah, I'm trying to think, like... So, I don't read a lot of full novels these days. A lot of my sci-fi time is whatever gets published in Asimov's and Analog. Because... that's what I got a subscription to, and it shows up in the mail every 2 months, whether I have time to read it or not. And I can usually tell if I've had a bad month and a half, 2 months, if I've just haven't taken them out of the wrappers yet. Because that means I have not had time to just sit and read. That name does seem familiar, though. So I might have seen some... So the problem with reading a lot of short stuff like that is I don't always do a good job of keeping straight in my head who wrote what. Like, I remember being really impressed by the first thing I read by Marie Vibert. But I don't remember which thing it was. And I could go look it up by pulling the thing out of the shelf. But I was just like, man, this person's really good. I should follow them on Twitter. But, yeah, like, I a lot of times I read when I'm tired at the end of the night, too. And so it's like... I'll be excited to see certain authors' names that I recognize and stuff, but I'm just like... I'm like, oh, I remember when I read... The last story I read by that person was great, but, like, what was it about? I don't know, because, like, it's like, oh, I read 15 stories that night, because it's a, you know, pulp magazine full of stories. It's like, which one was theirs? Was it this one or that one? So yeah, that's part of why I was thinking like I need to start taking notes on stuff like this for gift guides or recommendations. So then also I have a reason to like take notes on my own, and then like maybe I can check out things by these people and justify it because I'm like, well, you know, because I don't think like for example Marie Vibert has written a full-length novel, but maybe they have. Let me see. Because, like, I think the first thing I read by Vibert was, like, a long time ago. It was author bio. Oh, there are novels on here. So, 3 novels now. Stories. Let me scroll down to the bottom because I think I read. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Fantasy and science fiction. Secondhand Destinies. Which I'm trying to find the one that I read where I was like, oh, this is actually really cool. Who wrote this? Oh, I think it was Room to Live in Analog September 2021. Yeah. Which was about a call center AI that was supposed to be, it was programmed to be unhelpful, but it became self-aware and started trying to help people without the bosses realizing it was helping them. Kind of like in the like, you know how in The Incredibles the dad works for an insurance company and he's like helping people file their claims even though he's not supposed to, and he gets in trouble. Yeah, that sort of thing. Except like, what if it was an AI processing millions of calls a day, and it's just like it knows it can only nudge things so much without getting caught, but like that means it has millions of opportunities a day to nudge things. The name was Room to Live. It was in Analog September 2021, and the author is Marie Vibert. Pepper Basenji says, I might like the Murderbot series. They're novellas about cyborg trying to fit in with humans, not understanding why humans do things. That's cool. Woken World says, have you read any of the books from the saga Recluse by L.E. Modesett Jr.? No, I haven't. I gotta say, like, one thing that I really appreciate about having the subscription to Analog and Asimov's is a lot of times I'm too tired to make choices. I have hit my limit on making decisions for the day. And so if I'm given like a bunch of options of like novels to read, like, oh, do I want to start reading this author or that author or whatever, I'll just end up like Googling a bunch of things and then never actually sit down and, you know, like I'll never buy anything. You know, it's hard for me to commit to like, oh, okay, these ebooks are all $7. That's not expensive. How do I pick which one, right? And then I'm just like, so yeah, it's one of those things where yeah, a lot of times I'll just I like reading the anthologies and the other stuff because I don't have to decide what I'm going to read. I just open it up and start reading and go from there. Which is, it's not that I'm a lazy person. It's that I hit my limits because I'm pushing myself really hard all the time, if that makes any sense. And so I just kind of reach a point where I'm like, I wanna sit and read something at the end of the day, and I don't want to just spend a bunch of time trying to pick what to read, you know? So yeah, those anthologies and sci-fi pulps end up being great. Bum, 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 bum. I think it's nice too, especially because they were a gift from my, I keep saying, well, it was my then fiance when Badger got them. But like, so they remind me of Badger, which is good. It makes me happy at the end of the day, especially when we were long distance. You know, and so it's one of those things where it's like, Tuabaka says, I'm about halfway through the 4th Bobaverse book. Really excited to get to the new one. I really liked the 4th one. And the 4th one was a really great kind of anchor for how I think the series can pivot into the far future. So, for those of y'all not familiar with the Bobaverse series, it's got a pretty long-term time scale, because the main character is functionally immortal. I'm not going to go into it too much, but, like, the 4th book kind of closes out. So there's a trilogy that's pretty self-contained, and then there's a 4th book that kind of closes out some loose ends from the first trilogy. And then the 5th book is a pivot to how the next set of books is going to go. And that's really interesting. Kind of like the way that, if you read the 9 Expanse books, the 5th book, I think, is kind of a pivot between, like, the old order and the new order to some degree. And the 5th Bobaverse book is a pivot from the old challenges to the new challenges. And so there's a lot of cool stuff on the horizon, but I will say, like, reading the 5th book is, like, making me, like, I'm ready for the 6th book now. Because I'm interested. He did a good job of setting stuff up, but, like, anytime you have a pivot like that, it's intentionally unsatisfying. In the same way, the 5th book of The Expanse has, like, you get done with it, and you go, well, now I have so many questions. Wow, now this could go anywhere, right? Like, you know, and so, like, good things. I have good things to say about the 5th Bobaverse book, but I will say the 4th book is a much more satisfying book because, you know, he has the initial trilogy. 3rd book in the trilogy, we solved all the big problems. 4th book in the trilogy, we're going to wrap up some loose ends. 5th book of the trilogy, new problems everywhere. And so it's just, it's a different, if you've read 2 books that, so book 3 and book 4 of the Bobaverse both have very satisfying conclusions. And book 5 of the Bobaverse sets up the next several. And so, by necessity, it's like, well, that's cool, but I want to know what happens now. I was going to say, when are we going to hit the 2-hour mark? We were there a while ago. Okay. Well, we're going to finish cleaning up our tools because I need those. And then we'll wrap up the stream. Let's go ahead and do last call for tips. If you enjoyed the stream, tips are welcome via paypal.me/JoeHills and YouTube Super Chat. Dun 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 dun. Is Jevin out here? No. I'm not fixing my tools anymore, am I? I'll figure it out eventually. Hey, Nola. Glad to see you. Chilari says congratulations to you and Badger on your nuptials. Hey, thank you so much, Chilari. We are very glad that we haven't reached the end of the immigration process because we still have the green card to do, which is going to be a whole thing. But, like, we're at, like, a pleasant place where at least we're in the same country. Nola says, howdy, Mr. Spanner. Surprised you're still on, but happy to welcome you back. Yeah, I meant to wrap up 18 minutes ago, and I lost track of time. Sorry. Oh, gosh, I've just got so many tools that are not fixed. Bum, 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 bum. Oh, is this still going? Bum, bum, bada bum. Okay, so let's see. We did last call for tips. Let's double check, make sure we haven't missed anybody we need to thank. Doesn't look like that is the case. That's okay. Just as a reminder, anybody who missed the wedding pictures, you can find the wedding pictures at joehills.net/justmarried. And you can find a few of the pictures that Badger posted on Twitter with this link. I've got some stuff from the honeymoon that's eventually going to end up in my video, but not sure how long that's going to take to edit. I haven't started recording it. We're going to start recording the video tomorrow morning. I know it's not on the stream schedule yet, because I was going to see how things went tonight and how I feel, but I'm pretty optimistic about having a stream tomorrow morning. I'm going to have to figure out my weekly schedule for this week. Kind of playing it by ear, because after a week away, you know, I need to make sure I got everything taken care of for my daughter, and things are all well balanced, but I'm optimistic. I think tomorrow morning is plausible for a recording session, episode of HermitCraft thing. Okay. So, we're going to go ahead and we are going to raid Ben Padden over at Ports Center, who is playing Return to Moria. Full disclaimer, at one point I was paid money to play this game on stream. I'm not getting paid to raid Ben Padden. I just think Ben Padden's a really fun guy, and I was pleasantly surprised to see him playing a game that I was actually familiar with. He's going to be streaming some Worms WMD later. I hung out with him at a convention in Nashville a few years back, and he introduced me to the guy who voiced one of the Animaniacs, and I'm blanking on his name right now. He's really funny, though. Ben Patton's great. When you get over there, our raid message is, howdy y'all, Joe Hill's raid here. Anyway, thank y'all so much for hanging out. Until next time, y'all, this is Joe Hills from Nashville, Tennessee. Keep adventuring. Stop streaming.